We're about to go away for a week, and so I just wanted to come out here and appreciate the spring garden, really at the peak of spring flowering. It's looking really beautiful at the moment. A lot of this is due to subtle planning from Jenny, but also just letting nature do its thing. So we've got lovely foxgloves, we've got forget-me-nots, bistort, geum, a lupin over there, roses, sweet william, tradescantia or spiderwort, geraniums just about to start, although actually you can see this one has been flowering. Those are seed pods on there. Oh look, there's a bee enjoying the nectar from the foxgloves. Covered with pollen, that bee. And different species of bumblebee there, buzzing around. Flowering quince at the back here. Aquilegia. These kind of grow around, self-seed all over the place. That's a verbena. These tall plants which are yet to flower, they'll grow probably 5 feet tall and then flower with lovely purple flowers. We've got another one over the back there. I'm hoping to encourage more of those because that will attract the hummingbird hawk moth, my favourite moth. That's a hollyhock, and that's a promise of flowers later on. But yeah, as I say, the spring garden, more sweet williams there. A salvia. This is hot lips, it's called. We've got a poppy, rock roses, thyme, valerian. Oh, this is a red valerian, but the white form of it. So yeah, just really enjoying the spring garden. Up against the wall there, that's woundwort, which a lot of people regard as a weed, but it's really good for the bees. It has lots and lots of these little purple flowers. Some people complain of a bad smell, but I can't smell it. In fact, we can have a look at that because it is flowering at the moment. The flowers aren't that conspicuous from a distance, but if you get up close, it has these little purple flowers, much beloved by bees. I did a B-roll slow TV episode where a lot of the footage was bees on the flowers of this hedge woundwort. Oh, Eva's out. Here's a little flower. You okay? Good girl. Wild strawberries all along the bottom of the wall here. And the herb garden's looking really nice as well. So we've got winter savoury, parsley, chives, fennel, thyme, rosemary and lovage. And then sage over here. Sage is going to need cutting back, so I'm going to do some cutting back of herbs and I'll dry all the trimmings. We're staying in Cornwall for a week and the weather's really hot, and look what I found, my favourite moth. Second time I've seen them this week. Hummingbird hawk moth. Now I think probably the camera here is causing some weird strobing effect with their wing beats. In real life it's just a blur. I absolutely love these tiny burb guys. So a question I'm often asked in videos is why don't I go, or why don't we have sandy beaches in the UK? Well, we do. And why don't I go to sandy beaches? Can you guess? So again, sandy beach and dunes are a fantastic ecosystem. And here's a sandy beach. This is Bude. So yeah, one of the reasons I don't come to sandy beaches very often is, well, I mean, I'm not a massive fan of sand, it gets everywhere, but also humans. This is the Bude Canal, and there is a lock here, which I think probably only opens when the tide is in. So yeah, at the moment there's nowhere for boats to come, but when the tide's in, and you can see how far it comes in, all of this beach will be covered. The strand line is over there on this little flat bit of sand, so the tide will come in and cover this entire beach, and then I suppose the lock can be used if you've got a boat that you want to bring into the canal from the sea, or vice versa. So I think that up here there's the path we can get onto. No, I don't know actually.
I'm sure I saw people going around.
Yeah, oh, around the corner, okay, we'll try that then. And then you can walk out onto this viewpoint here. Let's do that. So this is more my kind of beach. And yeah, less popular, but I think a lot more interesting. I mean, obviously you'd have trouble building very many large sand castles here, although there are patches of sand. But I mean, look at these rocks, folded strata of these rocks. I wonder if there are fossils to be found here. I think some of this might be the same age as the Crackington Formation, so we might be lucky. Yeah, I think there's a ramp we can get up there, and then we can go out onto that viewpoint. Let's do that. The whole of the bay is filled with a mist blowing off the sea. The surf is actually quite big today. There will be people out there trying to surf it. It's also looking quite fast. The waves are coming quite fast. I don't know anything about this harbour wall here, but it looks quite old. And it does look like the sea probably washes all the way across this, probably when there's a storm surge. Okay, that's as far as I'm going. You go. But yeah, so there's surfers all the way out there, and there are surfable waves. But it looks like they know what they're waiting for out there. They're waiting for the right wave. So yeah, the waves are not constant. There's a series of larger waves coming in now. I reckon some of them are going to take that one there. Yeah, here we go. A couple of them got up on that wave. Quite early wipeout there. Things I am a fan of in principle more than in practice. Those beach huts over there are lots of fun. And there's a Lido, a seawater pool, which when the tide comes in, the water gets refreshed in that pool. And then when the tide goes out, the water's retained in the pool. So it's a swimming pool, but full of seawater. No chlorine, apart from sodium chloride. So the canal, which we will explore a little bit more later in the video, this must be the terminus for the canal, this big pool here. That's the lock way down at this end. And if you look at this big pool here, the length of this side here is about the length of a narrowboat. So you can imagine when this canal was active and in use, there would have been a whole load of narrowboats all in here waiting to be loaded or unloaded. And this is the terminus for transport. Lots of bits of old mooring paraphernalia on the side of the corner here. But narrowboats can't come along here anymore because this bridge is only a metre tall. I don't think a narrowboat would go under there. I mean, they do go through some pretty small spaces, but that's only a metre above the water. The pedalos can just about get under there, although we did hear a young girl in one of the pedalos just a minute ago saying, "Oh, there's spiders on the ceiling," as she went under, but that was fun. So the pedalos that you can now hire and paddle around the lake, we're not going to be doing that today because I don't think Eva would be impressed. But they can go underneath here and up the canal a little way, but no longer suitable for narrowboats. So this bridge must have been built after this canal was no longer used as a trade or commercial canal. So we're back down at this end of the canal again for the moment. So these rails here, this was for carts transporting sand, because the sand was just mined here and loaded onto barges up there in the pool that we looked at just a moment ago and transported off for agricultural and other uses. So the sand was seen as a bit of a resource here, but obviously it is a finite resource, this dune. Anyway, sand dunes are kind of a bit of a special habitat for a lot of plants and animals, although this is a very small dune system here. Anyway, I think the plan is we're going to walk up to the headland over on the left here and overlook the bay. We'll actually be able to look down on that viewpoint we were on earlier. So there's an interesting little tower or lookout post or something up here. That'll be interesting. We'll have a look and see what that is all about. So already only halfway up this headland here, we're looking down on the viewpoint that we saw earlier where we watched the surfers, and looking down on most of the town and the Lido over there. So anyway, let's go and have a look. I think we might be able to go inside this tower up here and maybe find out what this was all about. Is it a lookout post? Is it a lifeguard station, coast watch? Is it a folly? It's got the compass points engraved on the stones up the top. Let's have a look inside. Oh, there's an information sign over there, so we will have a look at that. And there are sheep on this hill because there's wool there. Come on, leave it. So this is a storm tower, apparently. There is an information board outside, but there's a QR code there. Oh, so it was a Coast Guard watch tower. So there is the information sign about the storm tower. I will get a good picture of that so you can pause and read at your leisure, if you wish. So that's the storm tower. And I think we just head up to this viewpoint here, which is the highest point of this little bit of headland. There are higher peaks over there. I think this will do for now. There's a fence at the end to stop you walking on the unstable cliff. And actually from up here you can really see the power of those waves. Those are proper surfing waves. Perhaps the best in the country, I suppose. I know the West Country down here, especially the north coast of Cornwall, is very popular for British surfers. And I don't suppose today is the biggest swell. Now this is interesting. Out here on the water, don't know how well you'll be able to see this on the camera, but there is a flock of gulls all clustered around something. And I can see it, I'm not sure if you can on the camera, there is a slightly oily look to the surface of the water out there. And that's very likely pilchards. Also now branded as Cornish sardines. Same kind of fish, oily fish. Pilchards fell out of favour just, I think, because of the name of them. But they are essentially the same thing as a sardine. And people used to keep watch up here on the cliff tops. They would send young lads up here to look for this sign, to look for oily slicks on the water, and in this case the gulls all feeding on a bait ball of pilchards. They would light a signal fire or send a runner down the hill to send the fishing boats out to go and fish for the pilchards, because they would know that they're close to shore. So that very likely out there is a shoal of pilchards. So here we are, it's the viewpoint. I wonder if this was the footings of another tower. It kind of looks like maybe it was, although maybe it's just a modern structure. But there we go. So the viewpoints, we can't go any further than that. Either we can't go any further than that. The cliffs over that way down towards Crackington Haven, where we're staying. And then, yeah, flocks of gulls again out on the water, almost certainly concentrating on shoals of pilchards. And then the shore over there, north, up towards Devon. So here's something weird. Over there, on that cliff top, over by the beach huts, is that atomic shrimp eating fish and chips? This is weird. Up on the headland over there, is that atomic shrimp pointing a camera at us? Weird. Anyway, fish and chips. Jenny's got scampi and chips. Eva is avidly watching to see what she's going to get. I've got fish and chips. And dandelion and burdock. Overlooking Bude and the breakwater. What could be nicer? So yeah, fish and chips, really often quite a good thing to get at the seaside. It seems like when you buy it at the seaside, it's that much more enjoyable. Even though the fish may not have been caught directly adjacent to this bit of coast, it just always seems to be better in a seaside town. Okay. You want something? So it might just be a supply and demand thing. It may well be a remnant of tradition from when the fish was caught really locally, and so they know how to prepare it here. Way out there on the sea I can see oily flat slicks, and again I think that's probably pilchards. So from here up above the Lido you can see Well, we can understand, I think, why this is a popular spot for surfing. These waves, this is the Atlantic Ocean, so straight across there, out in the direction we're looking now, there is nothing but sea until you hit Newfoundland. Over that direction, once you get the other side of that breakwater there, nothing but sea until you hit Venezuela. So these waves here are great big, I mean, this is a calm day, but these waves come straight in off the open ocean. And they get funneled in by this natural harbour and grow a little bit, and they're quite surfable, and in the middle part there's only a sandy beach to land up on. Obviously there are some quite jagged rocks here, so they are obviously avoiding those. But I think, as often is the case in these videos, it's not necessarily obvious how big these waves are. So that rock out there that's got the marker on it is probably about as tall as a house, a two-storey house. And when the waves are coming in, they're easily breaking over the top of that, the bigger waves. But yeah, the surfers, you see them out there and they're sitting, and you'd think they would just take the first wave, but they don't. They're sitting there waiting for a good wave. And not every wave is a good wave. So I can see a big wave coming in behind that marker there. It's going to be quite a big one. But it's not big in the middle of the bay. So maybe here you can get a better idea of the, I mean, obviously once these waves get in here, they're pretty much spent. But still some fun for kids. And the tide is on its way in now, so we can see over there, that's the lock that opens into the canal, and the channel into the canal, into that lock now, is starting to flood as the tide comes in. The tide will cover the whole of this beach, and all of these people will have to pack up and go home. So, you know, let me know in the comments, is this your sort of beach, or do you prefer the same sort of beach as me? I prefer a rocky beach personally, but I can certainly see the appeal of something like this for kids. The shallow part of the sandy bit is relatively safe for swimming and splashing around. People are having a lot of fun in bulk. Favourite little experience here at the Seaside. This plant here is called tree mallow. This is a specimen that's more leafy and still growing, but same species. These are both tree mallow. So called because it forms a small tree. It's a shrub rather than herbaceous plant. But favourite experience here at the Seaside is just feel the young foliage. It is the softest velvet. And especially if you find one with no flowers on, actually, that's just in its growth phase. The young leaves, well, I only know of one thing softer than this. It's these ears. So we're going to have a little wander along the canal. I was just looking at tiny little fish, little minnows. So we'll have a little wander along here. It's again a blazing hot day, so we'll walk and try and find somewhere shady to sit down. That was our trip to Bude. A little bit too hot to be out in the sun now, so we're just going to cool off here by the canal before we head back to the cottage. Today we're just going to have a little wander around Wadebridge. Wadebridge is on the River Camel estuary. Basically they're just above and between Padstow and Rock. Wadebridge, but you don't have to wade because there's a bridge. Quite an ancient bridge, and in fact this harbour is probably quite an ancient one as well. Stakes and whatnot sticking up out of the estuary mud over there. Possibly the remains of very old fish traps. That is what they would look like, but could be staves from a boat that's sunk there and rotted away. Anyway, yes, the bridge. The local legend has it that this bridge, which was built in the 1400s, was founded on sacks of wool. So apparently they sunk sacks of wool into the estuary mud and laid the stones for the piers on top of those. That's what they say. So this is actually sometimes known as the bridge on wool. I've no idea whether that's true, but often building projects like viaducts and bridges and things did actually use some surprisingly degradable materials. I think some of the metal aqueducts that we visited in the past sealed up their joints with things like linen and molasses, or milk and cheese and whatnot, because that's what they had available to them at the time. Big grey mullet down there. In fact, there's another one down there. And the tide is on its way in now. So this is a river, and the normal direction of flow is that way, but the tide is coming in, so it's flowing up. The estuary is filling up. Very big fish, common in estuary waters like this. There's another couple of them down there. Reputation for having an awful muddy, poopy taste because they feed on estuary mud. Well, they kind of suck up estuary mud and filter out and consume the invertebrates and other food stuffs in the mud. As a result, I think the flesh of the fish is sometimes regarded as tasting a bit muddy, but I think it can be dependent on how you fillet them. If you just cut the top two fillets off without opening the body cavity, apparently the fish is quite palatable. I think there are ways of rinsing and soaking and whatnot as well. Anyway, mallard duck down there with its own private island. Jackdaw just taking off from the rocks there. And yeah, there's an information sign about the bridge. There's an information sign about the bridge up top, so she'll show you that this bridge has been extended. So this is not the original 15th century bridge. This has been, well, actually you can see where it's been extended. You can see at least two extensions of arches there underneath, but it's been refurbished and extended over the years. I'll show you the sign. But I thought we'd come down to the marsh down here and see if we could do a bit of a foraging. I was hoping to find some samphire, but I can't see any. However, there is plenty of this stuff. This is sea purslane, and this is quite good eating, especially it'll go very well with some fish. And I've seen some lovely sea beet along the higher part of the bank there, so we'll have a bit of that too. It's a shame I can't find samphire. I wonder if I think if we went a bit further down that way I'd probably find some, but I don't want to get stuck in a salt marsh. So anyway, it's going to be sea purslane, which is this stuff, which we foraged last when we were in France on that trip to Mont Saint-Michel. So there is also scurvy grass. We could have a bit of that, but I think we'll stick to purslane and sea beet just on this occasion. So on our trip to Wadebridge, in addition to this lovely selection of sea vegetables here, we got some fish from a local fishmonger, all locally caught and fresh. So I've got some sea bass, some sea trout and some prawns in here. Let's make a nice fish dinner. I'm going to cook the sea bass in a parcel with some vegetables. So I've got this lovely, this is also locally grown asparagus. According to the greengrocer, this is the last day for picking it. I'm going to pick out the thinner stalks, and we'll have those. The thicker ones I'll wrap up and we'll try and take them home. Or maybe I'll have them with some eggs or something for breakfast. Anyway, lovely, slim asparagus stalks. Just chop them all off there like that. And this is all going to go in a parcel en papillote if you're feeling fancy. So, asparagus in the bottom. Next, the sea bass, lovely fillet of sea bass. And this is just going to have a little sprinkle of pepper. Somewhere in my spice pot down here I've got, there it is, tarragon. These little pots are fun because I can get lots of different things in there, but they are a bit tiny. So a bit of tarragon, just really a pinch, a little bit of salt. I've got some pesto left over from a meal we cooked the other evening. We made a pasta dish with some basil pesto, but I think this will be quite nice with this sea bass. So we'll just have some of that along there. There. What next? Sea beet. I've given these all a nice rinse. We've got a little floret there of sea beet as well. Okay, and then the sea purslane as well, just the leaves. So I'll pull all of those leaves off the woody stalks. And these sea purslane leaves are the reason why I went a little bit light on the salt. It grows in the intertidal zone in estuaries and is inundated by salt water when the tide comes in. So it has quite a tangy but also a definitely salty flavour. Okay, a little bit more of that pesto across the top. The rest of the asparagus on top. Close that up as best I can. If I only had some of those little metal clips I've got at home. But that's good enough. So that goes to one side now. To accompany this, so I've got a bit of celery. Save those leafy bits. Those can go in as a garnish later. I've got some spring onions. And we'll just have the white bits to start with. Up to about there. Green for later. I'm going to preheat the oven to 200. It's not a fan oven, and I'm going to put this pan in there to heat up as well, so that we don't, when we put the fish parcel in, it will go straight into a hot thing. Next, I've got some lovely shell-on prawns, so I'm going to fry them in here first. So we'll get this pan hot. Into this pan, some butter. In with the prawns as well. And we'll season these in the pan. So I've got some garlic powder, a little bit of salt, mixed herbs, pepper, and in with them as well some little cherry tomatoes. Nothing resembling tongs in this holiday cottage kitchen, so I'll just have to make do. Come on. My portable spice kit does afford me one little pinch of saffron in one of those tiny pots. So earlier on I dropped that in some water and infused it. It's really looking rather nice now. It's quite a lot of saffron in there, but it is cheap saffron, so it took that much to give it some decent colour. Prawns are looking really good. The spices on them have toasted a little bit. That's good. They're looking great. Those can come out now and rest. And straight in there, my celery and spring onion. I'm just going to take that off the heat for a moment because that's a little bit frazzled. And also my rice is going to go in. Just a cupful of that is just easy cook long grain rice. Not the right rice for paella, but who said that's what we're making? I'm just going to allow that rice to toast for a little bit in the pan before we add some liquid. Meanwhile, the oven is up to speed. So, my hot tin, my parcel, and I do need some more butter in there because I forgot. To put butter in there, so we'll put a little bit of that, just post it in the top there and there. Trying my best to seal that back up again, like that. And that's going to go in the oven. It'll take as long as the rice does to cook. So, that rice has had a little toast. We're now going to have paprika, just sweet paprika. And that's going to have 10 seconds of toasting before that saffron liquid goes in. Plus another cup. The heat can come back up now. So that's going to have a little bit more mixed herbs and a little bit more garlic because I think some of that garlic's probably adhered to the prawns. So, nice piece of sea trout. I've just taken the skin off and then cut it up into lovely little bite-sized chunks. That's going to go in the top of the rice, just to steam. That rice is all but done. So I'm going to turn that off completely. And just in the residual heat of steaming that rice, little pieces of salmon are going to go in, sea trout are going to go in on top. Just a tiny bit of seasoning straight onto that fish. And also some thin slices of lemon. In this pan over here, I'm just going to cook the salmon skin. That's going to be a little treat for Eva. And also those prawns are just going to now go back in on top. They're still actually quite hot, but I just want them to just finish and warm up back in there. And then just to finish that off, the green bits of the spring onions and some of the celery leaves, just as a herb really. I'll just let those warm through. Okay, time to plate up. And bearing in mind the very limited facilities here, I'm really having to double things around to find the space. Sea trout rice. Okay. I suppose probably the main thing to taste here is the rice, because that's the most improvised thing. It's good. And then sea bass with sea vegetables. Those little purslane leaves. Really good. And these prawns, it might seem a little bit pointless putting all the flavour on the outside of the shell of the prawn, but it does get transferred to the prawn when you're peeling it. Nice. So we've been away for a week in Cornwall, and I'm going to be away for another 2 weeks in Spain. The Spain trip is not a holiday, it's going to be a family visit with some duties. A lot has changed in the week we've been away. It's been a heat wave, and actually looking on the ground here, it looks like autumn, but this is our holm oak, and it's grown itself a new crop of evergreen leaves. So it lost a lot of its leaves. It is evergreen because there's never a point when it's completely bare, but it's got catkins on there. We might get a good crop of acorns this year, you never know. And the acorns from the holm oak are edible without too much preparation. Anyway, what's been happening while we've been away? Potatoes are very vigorously growing now. Now, we did harvest the radishes out of the middle of there before we went, and they were all good. So it definitely is worth planting radishes at the same time as potatoes. You've just got enough time to get a catch crop in there and harvest the radishes. The pak choy around the edge, well, the heat has made these all bolt. Well, most of them anyway. But I can see I've got a leaf miner in that particular leaf there, so we will discard that bit. But there is some edible pak choy, so I think we will be able to pick those and just clear them out from around the edge to leave the potatoes, which are looking very fine and healthy. Not quite so good is what's going on in here in the greenhouse. Now there is an automatic watering system in here, but my tomatoes are really looking pretty sad. I think they probably need feeding. What's slightly annoying is the tomatoes that are grown as weeds are doing really well. So these tomato plants here are just self-seeded weeds, and they're doing fine. That one at the end there is okay, but yeah, the tomato plants I actually planted are really looking rather poor. We may have to do something about that. I may dig up some of these self-seeded, these are the little berry tomatoes, and put them somewhere out in the garden and see what happens. So meanwhile, peppers are looking okay, although the plants are a little bit stunted, I would say. So I think probably a good feed is needed in here, but we've got flowers on most of these peppers. And I've sunk a few other pots and put things in here so that they could get watered. There's some capillary matting in the bottom of this trough, so my asparagus plants and other bits and bobs are getting a little water while we were away. Tree babies are doing well. There are now actually 3 quinces in this pot here, so I will have to separate those and pot them up. But yeah, that's all doing okay. Courgettes have come on nicely. We've got the first flower here. And that is a female flower, but it won't get pollinated because there are no male flowers, so I might just pick that off and eat it today, actually. Eat the flower and the little embryo courgette there. We've got some broad beans to pick. These are looking okay. The pods are feeling relatively full now. These haven't been watered for a whole week, but they've got their roots down now, so they're doing okay. The runner beans, doing all right. They probably need a water. They are determined to grow up this mesh rather than up the canes we've given them. So I had to unravel a couple of those and show them the cane. Show them their way to the canes. I'll do that again. Just trying to direct them to the bit we want them to grow up. The leeks have all got scapes on them now. There's 4 big scapes there, one of them taller than me. How about that? If there was a category in, I wonder if there is even a category in the Dorset County show for the tallest leek, I could enter that and I might even win. I don't think I'll be here though. I need to go away for a couple of weeks to Spain to attend to some family matters. So I've set up an extension to the watering system so that the courgettes will get a daily water. I can see in the end, I suspect I may extend this watering system so that I can have automatic watering to all the vegetable beds, and perhaps with valves on each piece so I can adjust it and different things get different amounts of water. Jenny's still here. It's just me going to Spain, so Jenny will be able to pick some courgettes while I'm away. The downstairs garden, well, it's really developed in the heat. The foxgloves are now about 2/3 of their way through flowering. They're all flowering on the top half of the stalk now. These are all finished flowers with the little seed pods. When these go to seed, and actually these little side branches, you get then these little side branches with their own sets of flowers that come out of the side shoots. So each of these little seed pods holds maybe 100 seeds. So that's like a couple of thousand on each plant, tens of thousands across the whole lot here. And the tiny seeds will fall down, lay dormant in the soil and produce new plants. We didn't plant any of these foxglove. Oh, dragonfly. Wow, a big blue dragonfly. Amazing. Not a common visitor to our garden, that one. Is it going to land in front of me? That would be good, wouldn't it? No. Very difficult to actually get a close-up view of these dragonflies. They've got such good eyesight that the moment I move closer to it, it's likely to... No, we're good. How about that? Big dragonfly. I will identify the species and put the name on the screen. First time I've seen that one in the garden though. But a welcome visitor, as most insects are. In other news, the basil cuttings, these are the ones I got from my little waste knot box and put in water in my last video. These are growing roots, one of them lots of roots. One of them has a flower spike on it though, so I'm going to take off that flower spike. I'll pinch it out there. I'm going to go and plant these in the greenhouse now, where they're going to be left alone until I come back from Spain, by which time hopefully we'll have great big bushy basil plants. I might just pinch out the top of this one as well, just to encourage it to bush out from this point here. So these can just go here. And this area does get a little bit of water from this sprayer, but I'll give them a good water in as well. And we'll check back on those in a couple of weeks' time when I get back from Spain. My nephew recently got a peanut stuck in his ear. Fortunately, I was on hand to help. I poured in some molten chocolate and it came out a treat. That joke used to work better when there was a chocolate-coated confectionery called Treats, which was supplanted by peanut M&Ms. However, I was surprised to find this the other day. Treats appear to be back. So Treats used to be the British version, more or less, of M&Ms, peanut M&Ms. They were chocolate-coated peanuts in a crisp candy shell. They weren't multicoloured, they were just brown. They were a brand from Mars Confectionery in the UK, and they went away and were supplanted by peanut M&Ms around about the same time as Marathon turned into Snickers and Opal Fruits turned into Starburst, and probably some other things I can't think of. Anyway, so Treats are back, except this is not by Mars, this is by Candy Kittens. I think Mars relinquished the trademark and it's been acquired by a different company. These are, I'm not even sure what's going on here. These are vegan, plant-powered, not even chocolate. This is Choviva, or Choviva, a vegan substitute for milk chocolate and a cocoa-free substitute. I don't know, maybe the cocoa-free thing is to attempt to deal with the ethical issues surrounding chocolate production, or perhaps just the sporadic production issues with chocolate. Anyway, these are salty peanuts in a 43% chocolate alternative made from sunflower seeds with brown sugar shell. Ingredients: 32% peanuts, vegetable fat, which is palm oil, and shea in sunflower seed flour, grape seed flour, emulsifier, lecithins, salt, glucose syrup, maltodextrin, rice starch, thickener, which is gum arabic, glazing agent, which is carnauba wax. Colours: carotenes, vegetable carbon, natural flavouring, palm oil and carnauba wax from responsible sources. So, Candy Kittens introduces... Candy Kittens Introduces is a platform for the world's finest plant-powered snacks. Oh, I see. Candy Kittens Introduces is the brand. That didn't make semantic sense there for a moment. Every product has been handpicked to meet the standards you expect from Candy Kittens. Hey peanut fans, these salted peanuts coated in Choviva, chocolate's sunflower-powered buddy, are the ultimate savoury sweet combo. Bold, indulgent, and impossible to put down. Well, I'll be the judge of that. There's the nutrition information, if you're interested. Let's open these up and have a look. Oh, well, I was going to say they look like chocolate, but they don't. They've got a greyish mauve sort of appearance. They do smell vaguely chocolatey. Let's have a taste. Let's actually just bite one in half so you can have a look. There you go. Well, I think I want to cut one of these in half carefully so we can actually see what it's like inside. There we go. I'll get you a close-up picture of that as well. Well, okay. So, softer than I remember Treats being, but the weather is very warm at the moment, so we probably need to take that into account. Texturally, quite similar to chocolate, including the kind of mouthfeel and the meltiness. Flavour is unfortunately like the cheapest of cheap chocolate you can imagine. I think that is just because, you know, really cheap chocolate tends to skimp on the cocoa solids. There's this kind of curve of chocolate appreciation that kind of tails off as the cocoa solids reduce. And given that these are essentially chocolate in which the cocoa mass has been reduced to zero, they unfortunately land at the bottom of that curve. They're not horrible at all. They're not nasty. They're just... Trouble is, I'm expecting chocolate. And there is enough of a hint of chocolate texture and appearance in there that that expectation is kind of fed a little bit. But the flavour then doesn't have that deep, complex aroma of chocolate with some of the bitterness and other factors. These taste less like chocolate than the carob chocolate substitutes do, if that's possible. As I say, not horrible. They are very peanutty. The coating is almost like a peanut butter sort of flavour and texture, without that cloying clinginess that smooth peanut butter often has. I don't know about these. I miss Treats.
I probably should have got some peanut M&Ms to taste alongside these. I think treats did come back for a little while in the 90s or something like that. Had a brief revival and they're gone again. But yes, the closest you can get now is peanut M&Ms, but obviously that's a different kind of chocolate in there. Okay, overall opinion. If you have reasons to avoid chocolate, I suppose these are probably quite good. If you don't have reasons to avoid chocolate, I'm not sure why you'd bother. If you have reasons to avoid dairy, these might be quite good. Now, of course, you can avoid dairy and still have chocolate, but these are a milk chocolate substitute. I don't know. Can't think why I'd buy these again. They're not quite hitting the spot for me in terms of a chocolate substitute. But nonetheless, interesting. And yeah, of course, I've been munching on these, so they're not terrible. So there we go. Treats are back. I think this product's not bad in its own right. For what it is, it's not bad. But for it to appear as this beloved, remembered, nostalgic brand for me does make this a bit of a pale shadow.
I'm back in southern Spain, in the usual place I visit, near Puerto de Mazaron, in the region of Murcia. Different time of year. It's June. I don't normally come out this time of year. I'm dealing with some family business, so this isn't really a leisure visit. We probably won't get to do a hike up a mountain this time, but there are a few different things to see at this time of year. The vegetation is all really burned off now and dried out, but there is lots of fauna to look at. So lots and lots of woodlice in the morning. The ubiquitous firebugs, including firebugs making more baby firebugs. This, I think this is an Andalusian wall lizard. And then there's this is a tree we looked at last time. This is a Pride of Bolivia, I think. And this one's in flower now. So it has these little yellow pea flowers, actually very spectacular, widely planted in cities. But this is what the flowers look like. We'll get one that's just fallen recently. So quite brightly coloured yellow. Well, there you go. You can see that's a pea flower. It's got the keel and the standards, I think they're called, or something like that. Oh, there's an even fresher one there. Perhaps we can look at. There we go. But yes, lots of firebugs all over the trees and everything. There we go. There we go. There's one that's you can see that's a bit more of a pea flower. Lots and lots and lots of flies, just housefly type of things, but everywhere and quite troublesome. But yeah, loads and loads of these little firebugs. I'll get you a close-up picture of one of them. They've got a kind of a Deadpool thing going on. The weather this time really, really humid. I think it might actually be warmer in the UK where I left, but it definitely feels hotter here. It's humid and thundery, oppressively hot, just because of the humidity. This is the same dry valley that I've brought you to in many videos. It's the second week of June now, and it's really, really hot and parched and dry. We're not going to go for a long walk here. In fact, this segment was recorded as part of a cooking challenge video where I came down here to get some rosemary. You're watching the longer part of it, which is just going to be a little very brief ramble through here just to see if there are any flowers we can point at and go, ooh. Anyway, let's go for a wander. So I don't think there's going to be very many flowers to point at today, but we'll see what we can find. But the main objective is rosemary for the cooking challenge video. If you're watching this in the other context, where it's in a random stuff video, then it's going to be a slightly longer segment where we'll just see what else we can look at. Well, here's a plant we haven't actually looked at before in a previous video because I've never been out here at the right time for it to be flowering. So this is a mullein, verbascum. Not quite sure which species, but that's nice to see. That's one I've not witnessed flowering before because I've just never been here at the right time. This thing we have seen before, this is this yellow thistle. This is a distaff thistle, Carthamnus. Flowers look to be mostly over, I think, but we'll see if we can find one with fresher looking flowers. My primary objective for walking up here today is to get some rosemary for the cooking challenge. So let's find a nice looking specimen of rosemary. They're all looking quite dry. But we'll find there's a nice green looking one up there. That'll do. So we'll have some nice sprigs of rosemary from this plant here. Oh, rabbit. Oh, and a hoopoe. Right, rosemary. Romero. I think that's probably plenty. Yeah, really not a lot in flower at the moment. There's this thing which is something in the mint family, I can't remember what. I'll put it on the screen. Lots and lots of little mint moths around this. Actually, not the mint moths I normally get at home, but lots of little mint moths of some sort. Some of the rosemary's just barely trying to flower. It's a little bit early in the season. They'll typically flower in late summer. Here's another one of these distaff thistles. Can't find one in full flower. I think it is just too dry. Don't know what that bird was. Not a sparrow. Possibly a rock lark or something like that. Oh, here we are. Here's a specimen of a distaff thistle in full flower, and it's flowering because it's right in this depression in the ground here, which is basically the watercourse, or it would be if this river was flowing. So this is probably the dampest part of the soil, and it's got its roots in shade as well. So there we go. Carthamnus. And here's its counterpart over here in the full sun. And all the flowers are looking a bit withered. It feels so hot. The temperature is only something like 25, 26 degrees Celsius. But there is a great deal of humidity and it feels like it's in the 30s. And there are a lot of flies, which is a nuisance. Anyway, we'll complete this little circuit of the valley up here. I can see a swift or a swallow or something zipping around there. Other possibilities for our foraged herb could have been fennel. These woody stalks here are fennel. There will be some leaves. And there's thyme around as well. Don't think that is actually thyme, but there are bushes of thyme here and there. This is the white asparagus that I foraged earlier in spring when I was out here, and you can see the plants now looking very, very withered. They've completed their growth cycle for this year and they're dying back. God, I'm going to have to get out of this sun. Mad dogs and Englishmen and all that. Yeah, there's I think they're rock larks. Possibly skylarks. We have skylarks in England, and they have skylarks here, but they also have a thing called a rock lark. But yeah, so many flies. I'm sure that's good for the things that eat flies, but it's not so good for me. They keep landing on me. I feel like they should be asking permission. Nobody touches me without permission. A big grasshopper there. Not big enough that we would call that a locust. And I've seen a few lizards about. I see surprisingly few lizards when I come out here, but usually I'm at the early part of spring or the late part of summer, autumn, and so I think the hot part of summer is when all the reptiles tend to be out and basking on rocks and whatnot. Whew, right, I am just going to go and have a look at that fig tree over there before we head back, just to see if I happen to be at the right time of year here for figs. I never seem to be here at the precise correct moment. That's a different cricket I can hear there. Right, we're going to be very careful going through the grass here because there could be snakes. So we'll just make sure that... Oh, there are. There's a ripe fig. Look at that. A ripe fig with a load of bites taken out of it by insects and birds. But there is a possibility we could forage figs. This fig tree belongs to someone because of where it's planted. But if we wandered up through the hills, there are wild growing fig trees up there. Well, there might be a fig foraging video if we get a cool enough day for me to go for a walk in the hills. You never know. Right, that is the extent of today's sun-baked walk in this dry valley. As I say, not a lot to see in flower. This is a caper bush here, so we might come back this evening because this is a thing that flowers in the evening only. So there's a... Oh, there are some flowers out, but they tend to wither during the day. So those are caper flowers. The buds, the flower buds, let's see if we can find one here. These are what you have pickled and you eat as capers. So that's where capers come from. Caparis spinosa. And then later on, after the flowers, you get these big fruits, these big berries, which is what you'd know as caper berries. They're also pickled and eaten. I can't actually see any of those, and they're probably hidden away in the middle of the bush, which is quite spiny, hence the name Caparis spinosa. So I might not be sticking my hand into the bush to try to find a caper berry to show you, but if there is one that's easily visible... No, there isn't. You might just have to take my word for that. Very pretty flowers, really fragrant when they're open in the evening. I think they must be pollinated by moths. I think these might actually be buds that will open this evening. I might pop that back down here at dusk and show you that one. So here's a younger specimen of fennel. So that's the thing we could pick as a herb. I can't see any seed heads, oddly enough. We could have had fennel seeds. That could be interesting, or just actually the unripened seeds, a really good sweet sort of aniseedy spice. So we could have had fennel, but I think I'm happy with my choice of rosemary. So it's dusk. The sun isn't completely down, but it's behind those clouds over there. And so we've got a kind of a half light. The intention is to come out and show you those caper flowers. That's why I'm here. But yeah, I was just walking along and there's a rabbit just sitting boldly right in the middle of the path. So it's cooled down, but it's still actually balmy warm. Still, in fact, a little bit warmer than I would find comfortable to be walking at this pace. So it's a calm place in the evening like this, but it's not a quiet place. The night crickets are chirping. There are the rustlings of small animals. This is when the rabbits can come out with relative impunity. Although, having said that, this is also when the foxes come out to hunt the rabbits. On my way in here by car, when we came in from the airport late at night, we saw foxes. As we turned into the site, we saw a fox off to the side. We did also see several wild dogs on the mountain road on the way in. Feral dogs, I think. Well, certainly not wild dogs. They were different colours. One of them was white, one of them was kind of yellow-brown. Anyway, as promised, I brought you down here to have a look for the flowers of the caper, which, if I'm right, should be in full bloom now. Here we are. Yes, there are several new flowers wide open. Unfortunately buried in the middle of the bush there, so I can't get my nose in to have a sniff of them, because these flowers are highly scented. I might have to see if I can find another one somewhere, perhaps with a slightly more exposed flower. I thought I did see another one, maybe on the way back up. Appreciate in this failing light, that's probably not very easy to see, so I will take a photograph and see if we can get actually good quality photograph of what that flower looks like. So just out for a little walk this evening. This is my last night here before flying back to England after 2 weeks out here. I regret that I didn't get a chance to go up into the hills or anything like that this time, but it's just been too hot during the day. The evening is quite pleasant for a stroll like this. So I'm just going to have a little wander up that dry valley and see if there's anything in flower perhaps that I haven't noticed and haven't spoken about. Okay then, well, it's really parched and dry up here. We did have rain last night actually, and thunder, but not enough rain to make water flow here. I've been looking at these fig trees because I did find one ripe fig that had been pecked at by birds, but I haven't found any others. So another time, perhaps later in the year, we'll see if we can find some figs to pick on the wild fig trees that grow up in the hill, up further in the hills. Keep the camera rolling because otherwise we tend to miss things. There's very little in flower at the moment. This is the white asparagus, Asparagus albus, that I foraged earlier in the year. I foraged the tender young shoots of this plant, but the plants are almost looking dead now, but I don't think they are dead. I think they've just dried up a bit. And come spring, they will come back to life. If not from the actual branches, I mean, these do look very, very scorched and dried. If these branches themselves don't revive, the plant, the crown underneath, will put up new shoots, which, as we've seen in that other video, are asparagus spears. It's still really warm, so I'm just taking my time. Well, there's a fig tree over there I haven't looked at. If I can get to it without going through too much undergrowth. Well, actually I could see from here if there were figs on it, because you'd see them against the sky. I don't see any figs there. This is the sea holly, eryngium, fully grown. All of the seed heads now full. Quite a nice architectural plant. One thing we do see more of in the evenings here is these big ants. I don't know if they're just out foraging, but making these trails across the paths like this, I presume they're just out foraging, or maybe they're relocating. Quite a lot of those have got very large heads, which are mostly pincers, so I will treat them with a little bit of caution and respect. Step over them and be on our way. Yeah, you don't tend to see those so much during the day. I think it's just too hot for them during the day, and so they come out and forage at night. Little bird there with a very long tail. Don't know what it was. So yeah, last little glimpse of things. There's a tiny bit of lavender flower there, look. Lots of seeds on this prickly lettuce thing. But yeah, this is my last stroll down here for this visit. I will be back here in a couple of weeks, actually, as it happens. But for now, I think the thing to do is just find a bush of rosemary and have a little sniff of rosemary. And here's a nice one here. Yeah. Just to remember the scent of this place. And one of the other scents of this place, which I've been focusing on in a different video, is this one here, capers. Very fragrant bush, this one. So here is something in flower. This one's being visited by a beetle. And yeah, because it's evening, the fragrance of this plant has started to exude, and the air around me is filled with this heady, tropical fragrance, this perfume from these flowers. Yeah, I believe the actual intended pollinator for these flowers is a moth, because they're pale flowers, they open at night, they're very scented. That's typical for moth pollinated flowers. This is the one that I don't touch, this bush, actually, because, well, as you can see, there are ants all over this plant. Maybe you can't see, but there are ants patrolling the leaves and everything. And I found in the past, when I just tried to pick a flower off of here, the ants were suddenly swarming on my fingers. So we won't be doing that. Others are not like that, actually. Other plants don't seem to have that, but this particular one does. Anyway, there we go. That's our little visit to this dry valley, which I've brought you to many times before.
Okay, today I'm in my mum's kitchen in Spain, and I'm going to cook a rabbit stew. This is not wild rabbit, this is farmed rabbit, which we bought in the supermarket. In fact, let's go and do a little shopping segment just to see what we're going to actually have in this rabbit stew. I bought the ingredients for this recipe in Mercadona. I love wandering about this place to see what's different and what's familiar. They have some interesting things in the meat and poultry section. Often they have whole rabbits, but on this visit only the packs are prepared chopped pieces. That's okay, because that's actually what I want. While we're here, take a look at this. It's a block of cooked chicken blood. It's used to make a dish called sangre encebollada or sangre frito. It's a really simple dish that I've eaten once as tapas and really enjoyed. Let me know in the comments if you're interested in seeing me cook fried blood on my next visit. Rabbit meat is very lean, so we're going to need something fatty to go with it. Options include some nice chunks of fatty pork, or maybe some sausages, but I bought a piece of cured Iberico pork, basically bacon, but lots of fat and loads of flavour. These sweet white onions are fantastic, I'll get a bag of those. Celery is very green here, but that means it should be nice and tasty. I was thinking about using white wine, but on a whim I picked up this bottle of cider. Lots of options for cooked legumes in jars. How about some nice big butter beans? And one thing I really wish we had more of in the UK, prepared stock. These cartons are really good. We do have options for ready-made stock in the UK, but nowhere near as good and such diverse a selection as you can find here in Spain. And finally, to go along with the cider, a nice red apple. So first thing I've got to do, I've got this pancetta iberica bacon, basically. We're going to cut that up and fry that to release some of the fat, get some of the flavour in the pan, and then I'm going to fry the rabbit in the fat from this pancetta. As always, space is somewhat at a premium here, but I'm used to this. I've got a small kitchen back at home, so I'm kind of accustomed to working in slightly limited spaces. So I'm going to cut these pieces fairly large because people that maybe don't want to actually eat this in the final dish can just pick them out. So I'm frying this pancetta in bacon fat. We use this pan for cooking some bacon for lunch, and I'm just going to fry off this pancetta, crisp it up in this pan so it's double bacon. Okay, lovely crispy pancetta. That's going to go into the slow cooker vessel now, and look at how much lovely fat we've got. That might look horrible, but it's we're going to need that for the rabbit. So I'm just going to turn that heat off because I can see things smoking. So yeah, that might look like a lot of fat, but we're going to need that for the rabbit.
So I think the herbs for my rabbit stew are going to be rosemary and thyme, and I know just where to find those. So rosemary and thyme, hugely abundant in this landscape. This is rosemary here, that's rosemary there, several other bushes over there, another one there. Rosemary, really, really easy to find. Thyme is also abundant, but not quite so easy to spot at this time of year because it's not flowering, and there are a lot of other small leafed, wiry little shrubs. But I will find you some thyme and show you what that looks like. First, we're going to find some nice looking rosemary though. That plant over there looks pretty good. So yeah, we'll just have a few sprigs off of this. Probably 3 little sprigs will be fine. Like that. This is thyme. So a lot of it's died back at this time, or the foliage has died back at least. But this is definitely thyme here. But there are a lot of other wiry little plants, but the smell test is the thing that will do it. So really aromatic, herbal smell. That's probably enough thyme for my stew because it's quite a powerful herb, but I will take 2 little sprigs. So there we go, wild rosemary, wild thyme. That's my herbs for my rabbit stew.
Now the rabbit, you typically get equivalent of a whole rabbit in here. So you get legs, you get, that's a little packet with the liver. There'll be a couple of legs, there's the saddle, all sorts of bits in there. Now I'm not going to season my flour. I'm going to season the rabbit in here because we would just waste all the seasoning that's in the unused flour. So we will season the rabbit. Salt and pepper. And then these rabbit portions, just going to dunk them in the flour like that, get them coated in flour and then into the frying pan. A few at a time because it's only a little pan. We don't want to overload it. Okay, so our rabbit pieces in there. That's probably enough for the first batch. I'm just going to give these a little brown. This is mostly to cook the flour, actually, because then this flour will create a sauce with the stock and other liquids that are going to go in there. But obviously a little bit of browning on here equates to flavour too. And then as each batch of rabbit is done, it can just go straight into the slow cooker there, into the vessel. Lid on to keep the flies at bay. And then on with the next one. I think this will probably all go in the pan in 2 batches actually. That's the head. These little bits here, this is the ribs. There's not an awful lot of meat on this, but we'll get some flavour out of the bones. Okay, got these gorgeous sweet onions. Not quite so easy to find sweet onions in the UK, but you can get them, but they're a very common thing here in Spain. And they're really good because they're just not so pungent as regular onions, which means you can use a lot more of them. Anyway, I'm going to dice up these onions fairly coarsely. So really coarsely diced onions, that's going to go in the pan where everything else has been fried. And believe it or not, we do actually need a bit more fat in here, so a bit of olive oil. Okay, so onions are just going to lightly fry in there, and that's going to pick up all of those browned juices from all of those other things that have been cooked in this pan, the pancetta, the rabbit, the bacon that was cooked in the pan for lunch there before we started this. Into here also, I'm going to put my rosemary and my thyme just to heat them up, disperse some of the oils into this fat. So the thyme, I'm just going to crumble the leaves off the sprigs like this. Wow, and if you could actually smell the aroma that came off this pan just when these thyme leaves hit that hot fat, it's lovely. But yeah, just going to break the little leaves off. And then the rosemary, I'm just tearing the leaves off and bruising them with my thumb and finger like that. So the rabbit might not be wild, but the herbs are. Okay, and I'm just going to toss that around just so that those herbs get a chance to really infuse into that fat that's in there. Then heat up. We've got a bottle of cider. And we will deglaze this pan with a whole 250ml bottle of cider. Just give it a little scrub around to get all of this fond off of the pan. And I'll cook that for a little bit just to evaporate off some of the alcohol. Right, over here then, rabbit is already in there. I've got some mushrooms I've just quartered. Those can go in. Don't need to pre-cook those or anything really. Onions and cider. Not enough liquid in there at the moment, so I'm going to use some of this stuff, which is chicken stock. The amazing range of chicken stocks they've got available in the supermarkets here. I wish we had this back at home. So I will just top that up to there. With chicken stock, that's probably enough. And then that's going to go on the slow cooker for about 6 hours. Right, we've got about an hour and a half left of cooking time, and I'm just going to add 2 more things to my casserole. One of them is this apple, which I'm just going to chop up into chunks, and the other is these butter beans, which are already cooked. So I'm just going to drain that jar, and those are going to go straight in. Just to really, they'll only need just warming through really, so I might put them in a bit later. Anyway, apple. And let's get that stirred in before it changes colour. So, apples are going to go in there. Give those a stir in. And they're going to get cooked in the last hour or so of cooking. Okay, we're about half an hour out from the end of cooking now, and that apple is starting to go soft. So now, in with my drained butter beans. Not because I didn't want the liquid, well, just I don't want any more liquid. There's nothing wrong with the liquid in butter beans, but we've got enough liquid in this already. So there we go. And in the remaining half hour, those butter beans will just warm through and take on a little bit of the flavour from the stock and broth that's in there. Okay, this is done now, so I'm just going to turn it off. I'm going to let that sit for about half an hour so we're not eating boiling, scalding hot stuff. I'll just move the vessel from this slow cooker to the table. So here we go. Rabbit casserole with cider and apples and butter beans. I'm just going to dish this out and put the plates a bit closer. Okay. Right, going to pass that one down.
Yes.
Thank you, Bob. So I've got some nice crusty bread to go with this, but I think what we'll do first is I'll just taste a little bit this. Look how tender this rabbit is. Bit of rabbit with a bean and a bit of apple. Let's just give that a little taste. Right, I've lost my bean. Really, really tasty. And there is an abundance of delicious broth for sopping.
So that was my rabbit stew, made in Spain. Not, I don't think, a particularly authentic Spanish recipe or anything like that, just something I made with ingredients that seemed the right thing to put together.
Okay, I've been away for a fortnight in Spain, and whilst the weather there was very hot and dry, here there's been quite a bit of rainfall and everything's really come along. So foxgloves are still just about going. Oh, look, I've got mulberries on my mulberry tree. I've got a ripe mulberry on my mulberry tree. Well, how about that then? Delicious. There's another one down there. I will pick that one for Jenny in a minute. There's one just hiding behind a leaf down there. I'll pick that one so Jenny can taste it. Anyway, there is a lot going on in the garden. A riot of flower and foliage. I haven't been up to the greenhouse yet to see what's going on up there. Now Jenny did look in on the plants and watered a few things. My goodness, the potatoes have gone crazy in the tubs. That is some vigorous potato growth there. Flowers already on the second earlies. Flower buds on the main crop. Perhaps I put them a bit too close to the greenhouse door. Wow, and the tomato plants have gone a bit crazy. Not all of these tomato plants are ones that I planted. Many of these are weeds, and it will have to come out. Let's have a look and see what's going on though. So, chilies look like that we've had some flowers, and there are some fruit set on some of these. The tomatoes that I actually planted are, yeah, they're doing okay. So I just need to get these are weeds. These are the berry tomatoes that have self-seeded. These are going to go away. Basil at the end is just about hanging on. Do you know, I think I might need to put the watering on for longer. I don't think there's enough water in here. That's a weed. Nipplewort, maybe? Something like that. There's a big dandelion down there. Wow, there's just a lot of weeding to do in the greenhouse. This is 2 weeks of neglect on my part. So, yeah. Lots to do in there. Let's have a look and see what else is going on. So the courgette plants, oh, they're looking very healthy actually. So I extended the watering system to come out here. We've got lots of flowers on the courgettes. We've got 1 or 2 actual courgettes developing, so that's good. Is that another one under there? That's a leaf stem. Yeah, we've got courgettes here. I will pick off these ones that the first few courgettes you get from the plants often don't develop properly. But it does look like we're going to do okay. There's some yellow ones just come in there. More tomatoes volunteering here. And some of the chard looks like it might be just about hanging in there. Broad beans. Jenny tells me she's been eating broad beans nearly constantly. So, yeah, but there's still plenty more to pick in here. My leeks have grown taller than me, and the scapes are open now, and we've got the flower bud, the flower cluster starting to open on a couple of these, but they're looking quite happy. Runner beans, well, they've mostly found poles we put in for them. They're still determinedly trying to climb up the netting as well. I will redirect these shoots to where they ought to be. Just a case of unravelling them carefully and persuading them to go over there. Same here. Just tuck it in and let it find its way up there. So yeah, runner beans looking alright. My radishes that I purposely want to bolt are now starting to look like they may do that soon. My Alexanders, I mean, not massively vigorous. There's only 3 surviving plants now, by the look of it, but they might be all right. Rhubarb is a bit of a sorry state, but it has got some fresh growth on it, so yeah, we're going to move that. Or as someone said in a comment, move the rhubarb. Move-arb. Well, I think maybe another week or 2 and we might be digging these potatoes, the first earlies. They're looking really, really healthy. Often appearance of flowers is the indicator, but these plants are looking so vigorous and healthy. I think I'll let them go a little bit longer and we will get more, or at least heavier, potatoes. In amongst here are the pak choy that I didn't get to harvest before I went, and they've now bolted, but that's not a problem. My tree babies are all looking okay. 3 quinces here, 1 there, chestnut, chestnut, walnut, walnut, all round here. So 5 walnut trees, 2 chestnut trees, and 4 quince. And I think this is going to be my preferred way of raising young trees, is to use a nursery bed like this in future, because it just seems to be a bit easier to keep the plants properly watered and not let them, because if they dry out in a pot, it's really the end. Here's an ever so slightly strange find that I picked up in the range today. I just happened across this. I'm wondering if this is a Father's Day thing, because this is Bully's beer flavoured gummies featuring Bully, which was the mascot character from a TV show based on the game of darts, hosted by Jim Bowen, called Bullseye, which I think went off air in 1995 or something like that. So yeah, I'm assuming this is a Father's Day nostalgia type of gift. Super smashing great. The host Jim Bowen used to say, super smashing lovely great. And here's what you could have won. Anyway, should we read the ingredients? Glucose syrup, sugar, beef gelatin, thickeners, hydroxypropyl distarch phosphate and pectins, acidity regulators, citric acid, D-L-malic acid, sodium citrate, humectant, sorbitol, flavouring, colour, plain caramel, glazing agents, palm oil and carnauba wax. Enjoy sweets in moderation and protect your smile by maintaining a regular dental care routine. Not suitable for children under 3 years. So, beer flavour notionally, don't know what that flavouring is going to be. Maybe some sort of malt or something, but they are very soft gummy sweets. It's really warm today, actually. That might be why they're quite so soft. And they are in the shape of a pint glass. Oh, they do smell like beer. They really do smell. Yeah, okay. Well, let's give it a taste. Kind of flavour is a little bit indistinct, but there's definitely some beery flavours in there. There's a bit of malt, and I think maybe a little bit of hop extract or something. That one, for some reason, is darker than all the others. Let's see if it tastes a bit stronger. Yeah, I mean, yeah, they do taste notionally slightly of ale. How about that? Bully's beer flavoured gummies. A Bullseye nostalgia sweet. Welcome to the comment positivity section. This is where we're just going to feature a number of comments that either asked interesting questions, perhaps just made me smile, or contributed to the general positivity of the comment section on YouTube, which is, I think, a thing sorely needed. First question is, did you ever end up attending a Dorset knob throwing festival? Probably better provide a bit of context to that. Dorset knobs they look like a bread roll, but they are dried crisp bread. They are a baked crisp bread. Traditional in Dorset. There's a festival every year where people try throwing them the furthest distance. And it's a country fair type of thing. I've never actually managed to attend it. I intended to, but I've never actually managed to get to it. It was cancelled a few times because of pandemic and other big upheaval type of events. And this year it's on the 19th of July, and unfortunately I won't be here. I'll be on my way to Spain. So I'm going to miss it again this year. One year though, I do hope to attend that festival because it sounds like a lot of fun.
If you can hear background noise, by the way, it's because I've got the window open. We're in the middle of a heat wave here at the moment, so I'm testing something this morning where we've got a window open, we've got a fan directing hot air out of the house to try to vent the warm air in the house while there's cool air to replace it. I'm testing a variety of different methods of trying to keep cool, and this appears to be working actually, so the fan is just blowing the warm air out the window. But that does mean that window over there, which you can't see but behind the camera, could be letting in some traffic noise, and it might be that you can hear the fan as well. On one of my Spanish videos, does it feel wrong driving on the right side of the street? That is right as in right hand side of the street, but that is also the correct side of the street in Spain. And in Canada we drive on the right as well, never have driven on the left. What's it like for Brits, lol? I always thought that driving on the right side would be the hard part of driving abroad. Turns out that's not the case. That's one of the easier parts, often because you're following other traffic, so you're just entrained with other traffic. That's not the difficult part. But also, once you're on the right hand side, the junctions and everything direct you to stay on the right hand side, so that part was relatively easy. The hard part for me was noticing all of the things that are different. So like traffic lights are different. Traffic lights are on a stalk that goes up and over the road typically in Spain. They're still very obviously traffic lights, but my conditioned reflexes for seeing a thing that exactly resembles a traffic light and reacting are not trained on that visual stimulus. And so I was having to deliberately notice traffic lights rather than let my conditioned reflexes do it for me, which in the UK, obviously, there are some parts of driving which I'm not going to say you're not thinking about, but some parts of driving which become automatic and conditioned. So you see a traffic light, you know that your brain just processes it without too much conscious effort. In Spain, because the traffic lights look different, they didn't have the right entry point to that process, and so I was having to be focused on noticing them, which is not a problem. You have to do that when you learn to drive the first time around, but it does mean that some of that learning process was going on again. Pedestrian crossings are different as well, just different in appearance, quite similar in function. In the UK we have things like pelican crossings, which are light controlled, so somebody presses a button and the lights direct the traffic to stop and the pedestrians to cross. They have that in Spain. But we also have zebra crossings where you just arrive at the thing and the traffic stops for you because you're crossing the road, broadly speaking. They have those in Spain as well. The thing is, in Spain, those two things look very similar. They're both like zebra crossings with the same signage. There's just a set of lights controlling the light controlled ones. So in Spain, if you see a pedestrian crossing with lights, you only stop if the lights direct you to stop. If you see a pedestrian crossing with no lights, you stop if there are people waiting to cross, or if crossing is already in progress. Obviously, driving through pedestrians is forbidden in most countries. So yeah, just those sorts of things. Roundabouts are really interesting in Spain because they are different in the convention of use. And also there are two slightly conflicting sets of advice from the police and the transport authority in Spain. And so depending on which one you follow, you will find yourself in conflict with drivers following the other convention. There's probably a whole video worth of interesting stuff about Spanish roundabouts versus UK roundabouts. Maybe I'll do that as a separate video. But yeah, driving on the right side of the road is not the hard part. The car, you sat on the left seat of the car with the gear thing to the right. The pedals are the same. But yeah, so staying on the right side of the road wasn't the difficult part. It was all of the little things that are kind of automatic when you're driving and kind of conditioned and your brain is doing them for you. I had to do them deliberately, and that consumed quite a lot of mental effort. So driving was a little bit more tiring, I think, in Spain than it is in the UK, just because not so many things are semi-automatic. The gearbox was, of course. I did try driving a manual transmission car in Spain the first time I went out there to drive, and the muscle memory in my right hand is not conditioned for gear shifting, and that was really difficult. So when I go there now, I get an automatic and drive an automatic because then I don't have to think about that part. But interestingly, again, that's a thing I don't think about in the UK. My left hand knows how to change gear without my brain really being very involved. Obviously, it is all my brain, but the conscious part of my brain. Anyway, Onward. On the Fray Bentos pies, we always find these pies are best done in the air fryer. I believe you. Lots and lots of people say this, actually, that Fray Bentos tinned pies are good when they're done in an air fryer. I do get a huge number of suggestions from people on how I should try cooking the Fray Bentos pies. Sometimes people saying how you're supposed to do it, and often some of those you're supposed to are quite unhinged. I'm going to make a video testing all of these things, but please don't suggest any more. The entry time for suggestions is now closed, at least for that video. So yeah, I'm not going to be accepting any more suggestions, but I've got like 16 or 17 different suggestions for how to make the top crust of a Fray Bentos tinned pie more crispy, and I shall be testing them in a separate video. In fact, I'm looking over at my studio desk at the moment. Here's what it looks like in preparation for that video. Next one, on the garden. That's actually interesting with no rust on the leeks. I never got round to harvesting all of mine, and they've been growing 3 years now in the same spot. Just had a look and no rust. So I think it's important to realise we could just be dealing with coincidence here. My leeks, I've left them to grow as perennials, and I'm harvesting them as perennials, so that means just leave the roots in the ground, cut the top part, let the plant continue to grow. And I did observe in a previous video that they seem to be really happy doing that, and they seem to be free of disease doing that. But we should just remember that I'm just one guy, so that's a very small sample size. My hypothesis is that allowing them to grow more naturally like that does make them stronger and more resistant to disease. It seems a reasonable thing to say, but we shouldn't probably infer too much from just one guy growing a dozen leeks in a corner of his garden on the internet. Let's not... let's just remember to take everything I say with a pinch of salt. Next, again on the random stuff video, this is one where I made my really oniony pizza. I think you would like cebulash then. It's a Polish snack originating from Jewish cuisine. It's just onion mixed with poppy seeds, baked on a layer of wheat dough, leavened with yeast. That does sound really good, actually, and I googled it and it looks really good. I think I shall be trying that in an upcoming video at some point. Hopefully with my own poppy seeds, because I've got breadseed poppies growing in the garden. I have harvested the seeds before and found them very edible. So I'm going to try making that when my poppy seeds are ripe. But thank you for that suggestion. It does look very fine. On, I think, the Spanish cooking challenge, somebody said €5 lunch challenge, baguette, cheese, meat, bottle of wine, relax and enjoy. So that's one. I'm going back to Spain in a week or two. Can I take a €5 note and buy enough food for a kind of maybe a homemade tapas style lunch with bread and cheese and meat and wine? I think it's possible, actually, because you can get bottles of wine for around about €1 in Spain, which is remarkable. I've never tried those, but I imagine they're probably drinkable. So I think it might be possible. And if I get a chance on my next trip to Spain, which is happening in a week or two, I might give it a go. On the other, yeah, this is also on the Spanish cooking challenge video. This is where I visited the supermarket Costo and pointed out that their sign said prices without competence, because it's a mistranslation of a Spanish phrase that means unbeatable prices, but they've translated it into an English phrase that means basically we are incompetent and we have prices. I mentioned that in the video. The really weird thing is that the day after that video was published, that sign changed. Here's what it looks like now. That changed literally the day after that video was published. I did, of course, wonder if it's possible that somebody showed them my video and they changed it, but I think it's more likely just coincidence. But anyway, yeah, somebody said, I think it's weird that the sign is in English at all. So yeah, it is on its face weird that the sign is in English, but I think this was part of this thing trying to be a bit internationally cosmopolitan. When you go inside that supermarket, there are banners on the ends of the till points saying, bienvenue, welcome, willkommen, all these sorts of, you know, international, they're trying to be welcoming to every nationality, which is of course a fine thing. But yeah, the sign on the outside, the area where that store is does have a lot of English expats living there, so there's that as well. Same video, I had trouble getting my pre-grated cheese to melt, and a couple of people said, have you tried rinsing the cheese in a fine sieve? And also, to get pre-grated cheese to melt, just rinse it off beforehand. Seems like it wouldn't work or would be messy, but it works just fine. So yeah, I never thought of doing that actually, because I really don't very often buy pre-grated cheese. And yeah, they put something on it. I think cellulose powder or something to stop it clumping together in the bag. But that does stop it sticking together when it's baked or toasted. So I will try that next time. I've got some grated cheese. I don't know when that's going to be, but thank you for the tip. I really do appreciate that. On the same video, and this is where I made a kind of chorizo pasta and a sardines on toast thing. And somebody said, I might have swapped the sardines and the chorizo around. Sardine bases are excellent for pasta sauces. That's a fantastic suggestion, actually, and I totally get that. So yeah, sardines and tomatoes in a pasta sauce and chorizo on toast with a little bit of tomato is basically pizza. Why wouldn't that be good? So yeah, that would be a good switch around. I wonder how many, I mean, this is always the case with these cooking challenge videos. You've only got 8 ingredients, but there are permutations and combinations that will work and some that perhaps won't. But yeah, I think switch around for the sardines and the chorizo would have been very good. And in fact, I might just try that anyway sometime, because I don't often use sardines in a pasta sauce, but of course it's going to work and it's going to be very good because of the savoury, the deep savoury flavour of sardines. Thank you for that. So finally, take care in the heat. Thank you for thinking of me. I am taking care in the heat, staying hydrated, including my shirt. We are having a bit of a heat wave here in the UK. Interestingly, didn't hit me quite so hard as it's hit some other people, because I'd just come back from Spain where it was very warm anyway. So I spent a couple of weeks out in Spain. I had slightly acclimatized to that heat out there and then come home to the UK, and we're having a heat wave of the same kind of level of heat as we had in Spain. So it hasn't hit me as hard as it's hit some other people. And I was already in the habit of hydrating myself anyway. So yeah, I'm, I suppose, one of the lucky ones. But thank you for thinking of me. But yeah, everyone, but please do take care in the heat. Stay hydrated. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.